Welcome to Over 50 and Frank, the podcast that says the quiet parts out loud. I'm Shannon, also known as Frank, when I drop the filter. And around here, we talk about aging, menopause, wellness, and life after 50 with honesty, humor, and zero apologies. If you're over 50 and craving real talk, pull up a chair. Today's episode is for anyone who's ever asked themselves, is this perimenopause? Is this menopause? Or am I just stressed, tired, and losing my mind? I'm joined again by Alyssa Abbey, and this time we're answering the questions so many women are quietly Googling at 2 a.m. when they're wide awake. We talk about how early perimenopause symptoms can start, how to tell the difference between perimenopause and stress, and what it actually means when you're over 50 and wondering if you're still in perimenopause or past it. So if you've been questioning what stage you're in or feeling brushed off when you ask for answers, this episode is for you. Let's dive in.
So Alyssa is back, and we are talking about the questions that my friends on Instagram sent in about menopause. And that's where these questions came from, is on World Menopause Day. I asked, what do you want to know? What would you ask a medical professional about menopause? And so let's get into the first question. They asked, I feel like everyone's suddenly talking about menopause. Why now? Have we been just suffering in silence?
Well, Shannon, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm super passionate about this topic. I think this harkens back to that WHI study that came out in 2002 because it's now 2025. So for the last 23 years, medical practitioners have not been prescribing hormones comfortably. Yes, you can find them few and far between, but it's because the overarching information, which was misinformation, as we know now, was that hormones were bad. So I think why we're talking about hormones now is because people are getting treatment with hormone replacement therapy. They're talking to their friends about it, and it's not so taboo anymore where we're not suffering in silence.
I also feel like it has something to do with our generation, Gen X. We are just kind of sick of being seen, not heard thing. Growing up, we were supposed to be seen, but never have to have a voice. Now we have a voice. Now we're I'm 50 and I don't care. Screw this. Perimenopause, you younger generations need to know about this. Darlene, my business partner, is 10 years younger than me. And she'll say oh, I have this weird heart racing thing going on. I'm like, that's perimenopause. She's like, no, it's not. I'm like, it's perimenopause. I literally I had experienced the same thing 10 years ago.
Totally.
I feel like our generation just wants to talk about things and things like that. I told this.
Well, and I feel, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I told the story to somebody else that my mom didn't tell me I was gonna get a period, and I woke up when I was 11 and was bleeding and didn't know what was wrong with me. And I was with my dad 3 hours away, and a lady in a bathroom had to explain to me my period. I did not want my child to experience that. So I was like, you're 8, let's talk about this. But I feel like our generation wasn't told so many things, and now we're we want to talk about this, and we want to tell the millennials and the Gen Zers and the Gen Alphas this is what happens, this is what you need to expect.
Yes. And we are living longer. So our expectations for living in a way that we feel good and our brains are still working and our bones are still strong and our muscles are still building and we are having active sex lives and our vaginas aren't dry. These are all things we're talking about because, my youngest patient's is like 28 and my oldest patient's 88. This is the range of women that are still getting hormones and are starting hormones in their 20s, people that are going through perimenopause early. So I think the awareness is just so overdue.
Side question, why do you think people are going through perimenopause early?
It's hard to define perimenopause because it's a cluster of symptoms and everyone's labs sort of vary. But I do feel like there's a hereditary component to that question. I don't think it's necessarily environmental or work stress. I think that if they found, out more about their lineage, they may notice that somebody in the family also went through that. And what I hear often from patients is oh, my mom went through menopause at 43 or 42. So it's typical for women that have family members going through it earlier to experience it earlier.
So the next question I got was, and it's a very vague question. Somebody was like, is it perimenopause or stress in the person's 44?
Yeah, I think when I looked at this, I said, that sounds pretty vague. I think it's multifactorial because the stress we may be experiencing from perimenopause is creating more stress in our lives. For example, if you're not sleeping well, how well are you functioning at work? If you're not interested in sex anymore because your libido is tanked, how is your relationship doing? If the relationship is a little rocky because of that, maybe you feel more stress. So it's almost like a cyclical experience. A lot of my patients come to me with new onset diagnosis of anxiety, depression, and insomnia. So they come in on 3 different medications. And my first question to them is this something that's been going on your whole life, or is it something that happened in the last 2 years? If it happened in the last 2 years, likely it's perimenopause. It's not new onset anxiety because you suddenly can't handle your work. I mean, yes, it's new onset anxiety, but it's not new onset anxiety with an anxiety disorder. So as soon as we get them on hormones, they get off of all those drugs. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah,
It was pretty big.
Yeah, I feel like it's an answer that I've never heard, to be really honest. Like, is it been going on before this, or did it just start happening in your 40s? Like, I love that. Somebody who's 50 asked.
Wait, the one thing I wanted to just follow up with on that one, it's like new onset panic attacks. That sometimes could be the one and only symptom of perimenopause, where somebody had the same job and the same relationship and the same work stress, kids stress, life stress, getting kids to sports. Now they're not able to handle their anxiety. I see that day in, day out.
That exactly happened to me. And the emergency room was like,
here's some propanolol.
Yeah, here's no, I think they gave me Valium that I hardly even used. It was really funny. Like, I was having like heart racing, and they were like, has anything changed? I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, but you have anxiety. I'm like, great. Yeah. So I was like literally just, I had just turned 40 like a month before. It was crazy. So somebody that's 50, and I asked them their age, so I know this. Someone who's 50 said, I think I'm in perimenopause. And literally, I was like, I was told until I was 47 that I wasn't in perimenopause, which totally wasn't true. And I went into menopause the next year. So don't you love when somebody that's 50 says that? I think I'm in perimenopause. Like,
yes, you are definitely in perimenopause, but the definition of perimenopause is so misunderstood because it's 10 years before you go into menopause. It's 10 years. So if you went into menopause at 50, it probably started age 40. Now, why this happens at age 40 is because your testosterone drops by 50% by age 40. So whether you have symptoms or not, I would say 40 is kind of the benchmark time where we could clinically, looking at labs, see that decline in testosterone. And by the time you test someone at 50, their testosterone levels may be 0. They may be 0, and they are still not in menopause at 50, but they could have a testosterone level of 0, which means they're exhibiting all these symptoms like weight gain around the middle, brain fog, fatigue, exhaustion, poor libido, anxiety, joint pain, loss of muscle mass. All of these things can happen between 40 and 50, and they don't happen to everyone, and not everyone has all of those symptoms.
That's crazy nuts. So one of the last questions I got was, what are the best remedies, medications for staying comfortable during perimenopause?
So if we consider seeing a professional a remedy, I would first and foremost recommend seeing a professional. The first step we would do would be get some labs, and then we'll talk about different treatments. And the treatments are basically hormone replacement therapy, but there's such a variety of things we can do. That's where I would start. I would say keep exercising. Certain supplements like omegas, DIM in particular is a good one for perimenopause or menopause. Being gentle with yourself is something that I tell my patients all the time, because obviously this is not your fault. This is just life. Talk to your friends and keep seeing that trusted provider, because things change. Like, my approach to things will be very different from perimenopause to menopause. The things that we add in, the things that we shift, the things that we change.
I love it. Okay, real quickly, what do you think about the news that came out on November 10th about the FDA kind of walking back what they said in the early 2000s about HRT?
Well, I think it's a step in the right direction. Unfortunately, we can't undo the damage that's been done for the last 23 years to female patients because of this black box warning. There's still some limitations on the warnings because it hasn't actually covered all forms of estrogen. Right now, it's just the intravaginal estrogen estrogen that they took the black box warning off of, which is just a component of how we treat women. So I think it's a step in the right direction. I certainly think that we have a long ways to go, but at least we have that off the table.
I was floored when I saw it, but then I was also kind of like with you, like, okay, this doesn't remove everything. I think with things that are controversial, so my son has pandas pans, and for example, like it's very controversial, and some people believe one thing and others believe another, and then the Society of Pediatrics came out with, the Association of Pediatrics came out with their guidelines, and they were a step forward, but kind of a step back. I feel like we have a step forward situation, but a little step back with this. I think that I'm just watching this. I'm not a medical professional, but like it's a step forward.
Yeah. And I think what we can't undo is the last 23 years of people going through medical school. Even if people do read that this has shifted, it doesn't undo the last 23 years of people being told that hormones are bad. Because even with that shift of that black box warning, these providers don't know how to prescribe hormones. Their mindset, and I see patients like this day in, day out, is that hormones are bad. And unless they're going to take the time, which we all know is difficult to come up with, to learn about how to prescribe them, it's only going to go so far. But at least going forward, the people going through medical school will have this new information.
Let's wrap this up and get into our lightning round. All right, biggest myth about perimenopause you wish people would stop
That
believing.
it's all in your head.
One daily habit that makes a difference for surviving
Hormone
menopause.
replacement therapy.
Finish the sentence. Women in midlife need to know
They
that
don't need to live this way. We can feel like ourselves again. Find a provider that listens and understands the pathway through this, and know that there is not one path.
Alyssa, where can we find you and where do you practice?
My practice is called Precision Skin and Hormone. I am located in the Tethero Sport Building up at Tethero, right above the pool and cafe. And the phone number for the practice is 541-241-3955.
And I will have all this in the show notes along with the products that we talked about and recommend. Thank you, Alyssa, for coming on.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks so much for listening to Over 50 and Frank. If today's conversation resonated with you, I'd love it if you'd follow the show, leave a review, or share this episode with a friend who needs to hear it. You can find links, resources, and everything we talked about in the show notes. I'm Shannon, and I'll be back next week with more candid conversations about style, wellness, and life after 50.